Hello and welcome back, guys. This is Ibrahim Quraishi here, and today we are going to discuss what's new in vSphere7. For those of you who don't know me, I am Ibrahim Quraishi. I was a vExpert last year, and I'm a vExpert 2020. My Twitter handle is Ibrahim Quraishi, as you can see here, and my blog is agileops.co.uk. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and my blog. A special thanks to VMware Early Bloggers Access Program. So most of the bloggers who were selected in this program were given a sneak preview of what's coming up with the new vSphere7 release and portfolio of new product which were under Project Pacific. Special thanks to Corey for arranging this sessions with the engineering team, and Amanda from technology PR specialist team for allowing me to use these slides for today's session. A quick disclaimer, because some of these features may not be released publicly or they might not go GA, because these were early access programs. If you have any questions regarding that, you can reach out to me at Ibrahim Quraishi on Twitter. So let's get started. So vSphere7 introduction we'll look into, but we'll try and understand what Project Pacific is. It's all part of the portfolio of modern applications which VMware was doing, and the Project Pacific is the name which is assigned for anything which VMware is doing around the application modernization. We'll look into vSphere native support with Kubernetes, which is the latest feature which vSphere7 is going to bring up. It's a game changer, so we'll dive into the existing environment, how we have and how the modern application works. We'll go through some of the pinch points where vSphere native Kubernetes can help us. With that, basically it ties into the entire SDDC solution which VMware is providing for VMware Cloud Foundation, which basically is the license which you need to get if you want to go for vSphere native support with Kubernetes. VMware had VIC, which is VMware Integrated Containers, which was VMware's initiative for containers previously. But it's different from Kubernetes, so we'll look into what are the differences in that. And we'll dive into more vSphere specific changes, which is around improved DRS, improved vMotion, and then get started. Okay, so project specific. As we all know, Project Pacific was announced at VMworld 2019 as a technology preview of VMware's effort to re-architect their industry-proven hypervisor vSphere with native Kubernetes. It was a code name for capability. Basically, Project Specific was a code name for the capabilities that would let you run modern applications, such as Kubernetes and containers alongside virtual machine and in a unified manner. Just to be clear, vSphere Project Pacific is not renamed as vSphere7. Project Pacific is the initiative from the VMware for modern applications. So there are other products available, and VMware is working on them, which are under the Project Pacific, and they help delivering the modern application itself. As I was saying, this is part of vSphere7 Bloggers Early Access Program, technical overview. So thanks a lot for the guys who have delivered these sessions to the bloggers and vExperts. So let's look into a little bit of why VMware are looking into re-architecting their hypervisor really. So the definition of application has changed. We all know that. Obviously, the applications which were designed and developed 6 to 7 years ago are no longer designed and developed like that. People want more agility, more the applications are designed differently these days, As an example, obviously, if we had a monolithic application which is like this, we have an app server and a database server on a node, and that's all we used to have. But in today's world, we have modern applications which are similar to distributed systems. You have Kubernetes clusters running, you have nodes running, GPU nodes running, serverless functions running, and they basically still talk to your app server, your database servers. So it's basically more distributed system. So for us to be able to deliver these more efficiently, this is why Kubernetes is now baked in. Um, so some other challenges which we face, key challenges for modern applications again are developers need more agile way of provisioning IT. They need to wait for IT to provision. This shows this basically slows down development cycles. The VI admins are constantly busy in provisioning and supporting silos of different technologies. They need to make sure environment is having performance, security, availability, and they have to keep track of overall cost. So another challenge is, as I mentioned above, um, to make sure we have resources for security, isolation, performance, and availability. So these are the challenges which any organizations are having at this point. So to tackle with these problems, basically fundamental change is developer access to the infrastructure. So the developer now have direct access to the vSphere workload um, by using the known Kubernetes APIs. And the VI admins basically they focus on their performance, security, availability, cost, and diagnosis. The developers can focus on their bit, which is coding, testing, deploying, and supporting, but they both basically are able to collaborate in manner which is defined by this architecture now. And also the developers can deploy, and the operations team like VI admins can manage the workload. So essential services for modern application is basically the key pillars which VMware is now working on is streamlining development, which is very important for real-time infrastructure access through Kubernetes APIs, integration, integrated Tanzu Kubernetes grid for full conformant Kubernetes, and container service delivers high performance and enhanced security. The other thing is agile operations, application focused management, simplified lifecycle management, as in intrinsic security and unified performance, and basically consistent ops across cloud, data center, and edge deployments. The last thing, basically the last pillar which you can call, is the accelerated innovation, which is basically making sure we have the performance and resilience for DB and business critical application, predictable quality of service on a timely for time critical applications. So we need to make sure we get that service. Now let's look into the features of vSphere7. So as we all know, we discussed the biggest enhancement and the feature is VMware's bold move to integrate the open source Kubernetes orchestration in vSphere7 using the Kubernetes API. The DevOps person can basically connect and deploy workload using vSphere7. So let's have a quick look. So the entire package of vSphere7 with Kubernetes is powered by VMware Cloud Foundation 4. So that's the license which you need to apply for or purchase if you want Kubernetes vSphere7 with Kubernetes. Another thing which we get is the advantage of managing your resources very efficiently, because with Kubernetes we get the stuff and the benefit, I guess, from Kubernetes, which is called namespaces, which allows you to create a namespace around an application, and you can then uh, collect all the servers, containers, or virtual machines per se for that namespace, which comprises of that modern application. Does it make sense? So over here we have a namespace, and then we have a DB analytics server, we have AI, ML, business, and time critical apps, which are running within the same namespace, all running under VMware Cloud Foundation, um, Tanzu runtime services, Tanzu Kubernetes grid services are running here, and hybrid infrastructure services. And underneath you can see the networking and the storage running. So this basically is basically this is leveraging VMware SDDC, using your networking with NSXT, using the hyperconverged infrastructure with vSAN and industry proven hypervisor, of course, with vSphere and vSphere7. So that's the entire SDDC, but under the umbrella of VMware Cloud Foundation services. So we can see VI administrators accessing their infrastructure from and managing from here, and the developers are able to do their deployment more efficiently with the agile method using the Kubernetes API. Another advantage with vSphere7 Kubernetes is transform your infrastructure uh, into run modern applications anywhere. By that I mean, obviously, the application which is designed by your developers, they can basically use um, the same application or deploy the same application without making very little or no changes at all in the public cloud like AWS, Azure. This basically helps a lot of companies for designing the app for the future, because they can not only design those applications for on-prem, but then they can be moved to the public cloud, and then they can have a hybrid sort of setup, and then they can leverage this when they need. Key capabilities for vSphere 7: vSphere7 with Kubernetes, Cloud Foundation Services, unified VM and container management through Kubernetes API. So it's a unified approach, whether you want to manage VM or container, faster development and innovation, greater operational efficiency and collaboration. vSphere Lifecycle Manager, advanced automation of vSphere updates, upgrading and also managing them becomes a really simple task. The another thing I want to briefly say is, sometimes we feel that deploying a SDDC is the hardest part. I think that's just not right. Deploying an SDDC is one part of the story. Once it is deployed, the challenge also becomes where you want to upgrade your entire software defined data center, and obviously maintain it, keep the patches updated, and keep the new releases updated. So using the vSphere Lifecycle Manager uh, gives the greater operational efficiency, fewer failures due to configuration drifts. vSphere Trusted Authority. So over here we can be sure that we are running it on a trusted and properly attested hardware, so low risk security risk via reduced attack surfaces. And then we have identity federation, which is integrated with Microsoft Active Directory. uh, that means obviously you have your username and password stored in ADFS, fewer security audits. So we all know obviously auditing takes forever, uh, but this basically will streamline everything from using the identity federation with ADFS. So as I was saying that VMware also had their VIC, which was a container service which VMware was running. So this slides will discuss what that is, vSphere integrated container, and the difference and how it differs basically really from vSphere Kubernetes. VMware vSphere integrated containers, or VIC, uses VMware Admiral as its container management portal. Kubernetes is the industry standard today, so we all want to go with Kubernetes. vSphere7 has a tightly integration. vSphere7 has tight integration with Kubernetes control plane now, because it's rebuilt from ground level to work natively with Kubernetes. So that's why that's the best choice. VCF has another benefit: vSphere pod services, network services, storage services that are not included in VIC. So that's another advantage. So basically you don't need to worry about the storage services, the network services, because obviously it's all integrated with VCF using the SDDC. Let's jump into the improved DRS. We all know DRS, distributed resource scheduler, is an important feature of VMware. The original DRS was cluster centric, runs every 5 minutes on the cluster, uses cluster wide standard deviation model. And you all remember this is how the balanced cluster looks like, which is ideal scenario really if you have a cluster like this. The new and improved DRS is quite different. It is redesigned and improved with keeping the modern applications in mind. So it's more workload centric. It runs every minute because obviously the applications has changed a lot, and they need to be monitored, and the DRS need to make sure the applications are running efficiently every minute. So, and by that it basically can make right decisions quicker sooner rather than later, if you know what I mean. So it uses the VMDRS score. So this is the new thing really. Instead of using the cluster-wide standard deviation, now the VMs are going to be scored by something called VMDRS score, and then the new dashboard for this for vSphere DRS is going to be like this, and you can see the VMDRS score is 85% here. Also we can see that it's based on the granted memory. So with improved DRS, VMDRS score, as I was discussing, is the main factor which will be helping in calculating the score. So how that works is VMDRS score in buckets of 0 to 20, 20 to 40, and so on. So the lower bucket score doesn't necessarily mean that VM is not running properly. It's all about the execution efficiency of the virtual machine. So DRS calculates VM DRS score for a virtual machine on ESX host in a cluster. If another ESX host can provide a lower score for the VM, DRS considers to move it. Simple as that. Also, there are other factors which will be involved. So VMDRS score is calculated using CPU ready time, memory swap time, CPU cache behavior, headroom for workload to bust, and migration cost. Also, you need to consider if the migration cost is higher, then the VMDRS can consider not to migrate the virtual machine, because if the migration cost is higher, then it's no point moving it, because it's a trade-off, right? So obviously it's no point moving it when the cost is higher and impacting the performance of the VM. So there are certain factors which we need to be considered. Another thing which is new in vSphere7 is the scalable shares, and it is awesome, I'm telling you. Before, you can imagine that we have 4 VMs and you have share enable. It will give 25% to each VM, whereas you could have scenario where out of those 4, one VM is in a different pool which has a dev machine, and you don't want to give a dev machine 25% really. So all your calculations basically goes out of the window, because now you are giving, all of a sudden a dev machine is getting 25% of resources, and your production ones are getting less in that scenario, right? So um, no DRS scales shares were there. So no dynamic relative resource entitlement. VM in resource pool set to normal could get the same resource entitlement as the high shares resource pool. Higher share level does not guarantee higher resource entitlement. So this is what um, the things we need to keep in mind. DRS scalable shares, now once they are enabled, relative resource entitlement to other resource pool depends on number of VMs in the resource pool. So it basically checks number of VM and then it recalculates it. Setting share level to high now ensures prioritization over lower share VM entitlements. So now if you have a dev machine and the share for the dev machines are given low, and the share for high your production machines are given high, it basically prioritizes your production machines and consider that the share for the production machine is higher, and you get better performance for the higher machines. Dynamic changes the share allocation depending on the number of VMs. So if overnight or in a couple of weeks we do provision another 2-3 VMs in there, so the share basically dynamically recalculates, and it's dynamically done. So I'm not saying that it takes 2 days to do it, but as soon as those VMs appear and they are powered on, the share basically starts to recalculate, and you get the performance, and you can see the DRS scalable shares doing its job. Also need to remember that this is not enabled by default. You can enable it when you go to vSphere DRS, and then once that is enabled, you can enable scalable shares. Scalable shares are configured on cluster level or resource pool levels. That's another point we need to remember. And scalable shares are used by default for vSphere with Kubernetes, where namespace is equal to resource pools. So this is another screenshot you can see, and this is for resource pool and this is for clusters. So let's dive into the next topic, improved vMotion. Let's discuss a little bit about why we needed to improve vMotion and the factors around it. So reduced turn time for larger workloads, increased workload resource consumption asked for the change in vMotion. First of all, that's the main reason. Resource allocation of for workload keeps on growing because the VMs we are deploying today are massive. They are like monster VMs. Some of the workloads which we provision, like some VMs, database VMs can go up to 128 gig of memory or 256 gig memory, even 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte. No, it's easier to deploy these sort of memories with the hardware being so efficient and so um, available for our disposal. Things are growing massively. So challenge today is performance impact during vMotion and this turn time for larger or monster VMs. We refactor vSphere vMotion to solve these challenges, bringing back vMotion capabilities for larger workload like SAP HANA or Oracle. So now vMotion improvements, when we are doing memory copy, install page tracer and page fries. So what does this mean? So as you can see, these during a vMotion we keep track of all the changed memory pages by using a page tracer. Change or dirty memory pages are copied to the destination ESX again. We install the page tracer on all the virtual CPUs in a VM. This causes significant impact on workload performance. So what VMware has done is, instead of installing the page tracer on all the vCPUs in the virtual machine, what they have done is they have improved it. They have said, okay, we actually don't need it to be available, or we don't need all the virtual CPUs to have the page tracer. So um, they have only used one virtual CPU to do the job. So in vSphere7, we claim one virtual CPU to do all the page tracing work during the vMotion operation. Much more efficient by improved page tracing, greatly reduces the performance impact on the workload. As you can see, the same virtual machine, we can see only one page tracer there for page price. Now if you look at the real time, what is the improvement? Now this example, I quite like this example because it talks about 24 terabyte of memory. Imagine that. Okay. So I'm sure obviously at some point we'll get to that. So vMotion improvement when we are memory copy optimization. So during the switch over phase, the last memory bit map is transferred. So assume that we did the vMotion and this is just before the switch over phase. And if we are assuming it's a 24 terabyte memory on that VM which we are moving now, in previous versions we transferred the entire bitmap, which was all these bits, all these bits which you can see here, and it's around about how much, 768 MB bitmap, which takes around 2 seconds. Now in the vSphere7 we only transmit the compacted bits, which is 141, 125, 8193. So instead of 2 seconds, the transmitted compacted bit only takes 175 milliseconds, which is less than a second, which is a massive improvement and savings for time when you consider for the vMotion. So this cuts time for a 24 terabyte VM from 2 seconds to milliseconds, really, which is awesome. vMotion performance improvement. Previous version we had page tracer installed on all the vCPUs configured for the VM. Significant impact on guest performance, inconsistent performance. So just a recap of what we discussed here when comparing to previous version and new version. And then during the switchover turn time, the full memory bitmap was transferred from the source to destination of the ESX host. So there are two major things which we have done in vSphere7. Now we are only claiming one vCPU. So claim one vCPU of VM to install the page tracer, which lowering the performance impact on memory per copy. And also during the switchover turn time, only compacted memory bitmap is transferred, greatly reduces turn time over a large VM, aiming for turn time to be less than a second, as we saw in the previous example, which was 175 milliseconds for all the workload. Okay, so let's dive into enhanced vMotion capabilities, and we have new support for CPUs like Intel Cascade Lake generation, AMD Zen's 2 generation. So this is going to be available on the EVC mode when we go and select it. So that's all, folks. I hope you like this session. So question of the day today: what are the new features that you like? Comment on below and let me know. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get all the new updates and post of the new videos. So be sure to do that. Enjoy watching and keep sharing, guys. Cheers. Bye.